archetypes and whether or not Jesus saw himself as fulfilling an archetype or whether he kind of like was the archetype. Um, and I think he makes a case that he both is an archetype and has a way of relating to other archetypes. Specifically, he says, um, given the fullness of the humanity in him, can we not assume that there are archetypes to which, if only partially, we can assimilate him, seeking to know? We assume, we mustn't assume a priori that the most hospitable archetypes will be biblical. And he goes in and sort of fleshes out his case. And he seems to claim that when Jesus said, one greater than Jonah is here, as he gives this prophecy, um, that he was sort of putting himself in a Jonah archetype. And on that basis, he then goes to explore what does it mean to be in the Jonah archetype. That's how I understood the chapter. Is that how you guys understood it as well? In terms of what the chapter is about?
I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah. Okay. So what does oh no, just spilled my coffee. Okay, so what does it mean to be in the Job archetype? How does he sort of present this idea of being the one who goes into the belly of the whale, and where is it that the whale goes when it goes to Tehom? Would anyone like to sort of talk about that aspect of the chapter?
One thing I noticed was that Job has no lineage. And sort of in the
Job. I meant so there's two J names in this chapter, Job and Jonah.
Okay, and you're talking about Jonah. Oh,
Yeah.
you're right, because he went deep into the, yeah, okay, sorry. If you're looking at Jonah then, which I can certainly switch to. Sorry about that. I'm easily confused. He goes deep into, and I've been thinking about the depths of things, like the depth of the cave that actually has snakes and the depth of the cave that has no snakes. So there's a differentiation there where one is, I think, a positive and one is a negative. I don't know if that means anything to anyone else, but that's, I'd like to talk about Job though. Sorry about that.
We will circle back for sure. So let's talk about whether or not then the depths are a good place or a bad place. And I will use a quote from the book here, where he explains Tehom. It says, Jonah was carried down into the great deep under experienceable reality. He was carried down into the great deep that was before the Cyverse was. So pause there, Cyverse, that's a invented word by our author that's combining psychic and universe. So this is a combined body and soul way of looking at reality. So before either body or spirit was, the great deep was, is what he's claiming. The great deep. Hebrews call it Tehom. Hindus call it Turiya. Turiya is Nirguna Brahman, the Brahman without attributes, the divine ground that is groundless, and out of which, in playful delight, the Cyverse emanated, back into which, sensing bliss, it will return. For all its emanative vastness, the Cyverse hasn't left, hasn't emerged from the divine ground it is emanating from. When it wakes from the dream of its emanations, it will know that it has never left home. And when it returns, the raven that Noah sent out will bring good news. To Christians, Muslims, and Jews, to all peoples who don't yet know, the raven returning will announce, Tehom is Turia. So I'm going to pause there because that was a lot of that cross-cultural question marking we were talking about earlier. And I don't even know that the speakers of Hebrew that I would know of would agree necessarily that Tehom somehow is the foreground of reality. That's an interesting thought, but I don't think I can yay or nay it. What do you guys think? Oh, Tommy's saying some interesting stuff down here. So, Tommy, you want to tell us? And it's okay if it's tangent. Let's hear what your thoughts are.
Well, can I ask what Tehom is?
The deep. It is. Let's see. Where does it show up in Scripture? Let's find out. This will take just a second. The great deep, Tehom. Right. So the first time it appears is in Genesis 1, 2, chapter 1, verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the Tehom. The next time it shows up during the flood, the cause of the flood is that the fountains of the Tehom are broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. So that's our starting point for what is a Tehom.
Yeah, maybe Tehom isn't like the clearest picture. I mean, it has some similarities, but the idea is the same thing as Matthew Peugeot's when he's talking about rest and death, both being symbolically renewals. The idea of descending into a place where you have no control and that you're at the whim of the environment, and your only kind of hope is that a miracle happens to get you back from that place. Just like we were reading in the last book, The Forest and the Handless Maiden, is the handless maiden goes into the forest, and she doesn't have any control on the outcome of what happens in the forest. You kind of just have to hope that it works out.
Mm-hmm.
All these places that he's talking about have the same outcome. Like Jonah in the belly of the whale has to just hope that he doesn't just get dissolved like the rest of the food that the whale has consumed. It's the same idea when you enter a dream, or you have some sort of an imagining, is that you can construct your imagination to get you the outcome that you want, but when you try and create something in the real world off of that, you've entered a sort of unknown place where you can only control so much of the outcome. And a lot of what he talks about in this book, Moriarty talks about with Dreamtime, is the same idea where you enter a space and you're at the whim of the environment kind of pushing you around.
Yeah, I'm picking up on the different elements that you're saying, and I'm just having trouble getting them to sit still on the shelf mentally, which is um, there's something that sounds like uh, the subconscious, that would be kind of the like lowest ground of the psyche, and we're, I guess, asking the question whether or not um, like the psyche is itself entirely grounded in something deeper and wider, the Tehom. So,
Yeah. So one of the things that I found um, when going through this sort of the land of fairy and what Tolkien calls like fairy and drama and the imaginal, and then what Lewis calls, well, anyway, it's this idea that the imagination in the classic idea incorporates a lot of things, and so getting hung up on the idea of the psyche, I think Moriarty is drawing from an older understanding of the idea of the psyche and the imagination, and it's got a lot of things attached to it. So, like the imagination, in a classic sense, has reason, rationality, what we would call the imagination, and hopes, and all that stuff is attached to the classic idea of the imagination. And so, when somebody like Lewis talks about the true or the imagination being like a truth-telling faculty and having your imagination baptized, he's not just talking about like the ability to like make pictures in your head or scenarios. There's a lot of things attached to it, and I get the sense that Moriarty is doing the same thing with this the Psyverse, is
mhm.
that he's taking this idea of the psychic, and he wants you to draw your attention to the place where where your thoughts happen, because where your thoughts happen are not just inner monologue, and it's not just as there's a lot of stuff in that realm. I think he's just using a modern term to get your attention to that world.
That's helpful. Thank you. And welcome, Mr. Faberjack. We are discussing Moriarty's book, Dreamtime, and we are, oh, I don't know, maybe 9 small, thin chapters in. So you're welcome to jump into the discussion if you'd like. I wanted to read what Candace wrote down here, which is really interesting. So she said, I think part of what he's saying is that Tehom seems to be this scary thing, but in the end, it's that empty skull. It's where the thing is born. And that was such an interesting discussion we had last week on the empty skull, the skull looking at the skull. The skull is kind of housing uh, like this seed of divine light. Um, so I definitely see the darkness inside the empty skull as being very similar to the darkness of the Bethlehem cave. Is that the same as the um, darkness of Tehom? Um, there's so another place where Tehom shows up in the scriptures, by the way, is in that I think we were just talking about it maybe somewhere on this Discord. It's from Psalm 36:6, and it says, "Deep calls unto deep." Let me find. Yeah, so this is Psalm 36, and I'll read the first 6 verses because it's good and we got time. It says, "The transgression of the wicked saith within my heart." There says within my heart. The transgression of the wicked saith within my heart, that there is no fear of God before his eyes. For he flattereth himself with his own eyes, until his iniquity be found to be hateful. The words of his mouth are iniquity and deceit. He has left off to be wise and to do good. He devises mischief upon his bed. He setteth himself in a way that is not good, and abhorreth not evil. Thy mercy, O Lord, is in the heavens, and thy faithfulness reaches unto the clouds. Thy righteousness is like the great mountains, thy judgments are the great deep. O Lord, thou preservest man and beast. How excellent is thy loving kindness, O God! Therefore the children of men put their trust under the shadow of thy wings. They shall be. Wait, did I lose my 36:6? Yeah. Hold on. What is going on here? I clicked on the link and thy judgment is like the great mountains, thy judgments are a great deep. I've lost the 36:6. It says right here. There must be something wrong with the link. Oh no, I've clicked on the wrong one. It's 42:7. I'm so sorry, everyone. That explains so much. Okay. Um, okay, let me start from 42, verse 6. Oh my God, my soul is cast down within me. Therefore I will remember thee from the land of Jordan, of the Hemonites, and the hill Mizar. Deep calls unto deep at the noise of thy waterspouts. All of thy waves and thy billows are gone over me. Yet the Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and in the night his song shall be with me, and my prayer unto the God of my life. So that deep calls unto deep is Tehom calls unto Tehom at the noise of thy Sinor, waterspouts. But its meaning is unclear. It means uh, something like nobody is quite sure. I'm looking at the definition here, and it's like where water comes from heaven. But sometimes it's translated gutters. It's like the gutters of heaven. It's a word that's not used very often. So deep calls unto deep, Tehom calls unto Tehom. The word itself is, uh, again, another dark chamber kind of, yeah, exactly. Jill's got it, like a chamber kind of emptiness that has this deep dark inside it. So I think we're still well within the realm of the empty skull and what is in it waiting to be formed. What's the dream time waiting to come out. So a lot of really interesting images here, and I don't have a big drum roll please ending to this, but it's a very interesting discussion. And I have to say my favorite line from this half of the chapter is when it says that the raven Noah sent out will bring good news. So the idea is Noah sends out a raven first and it doesn't return, and then he sends out a dove and that one returns. So it's like we're still waiting for that raven to come back with some kind of news. And he's daring to say it's actually good news that eventually the raven will come back with. So I thought that was really cool. All right. Well, um, if anyone would like to, yes, exactly, quote the raven nevermore. Um, if anyone wants to pontificate on that a little, now's your chance. Otherwise, we will turn to the discussion on Job.
I put some visuals of the Jonah similarity to Jesus in the iconography because that's one of the places where you will see like the great fish is the Leviathan. There's also um, there's images of like this giant beast swallowing up things, and then the ladder of divine ascent will get you away from that. There's also in the theophany icons, Jesus basically crushing the sea monster. Like that's um, part of that imagery. There's also the bait that we've talked about, and Anna has shown a depiction of that in the sky, where there's the place of the sea monster, and like the tail of Scorpio is the worm in that image. Um, so there's all those parallels with Christ and Jonah. Like he's not way off in seeing those types of one another. There's also in Holy Week, there's readings of the story of Jonah. I think it's on Holy Friday. Anyway, just putting those things out there.
Yes, I think those are all related. In fact, I just linked to my Pinterest folder on something called the Hell Mouth, which is a motif that shows up in iconography where Sheol itself is depicted as being inside the mouth of the Leviathan. So there's definitely something about this um, going into death that is somehow linked to this divine ground that all of reality is sitting in, and yet, as Moriarty points to in our next chapter, which is skipping ahead, don't worry, we'll come back. He says, what does he say? He says, dying, you destroyed our death. Rising, you restored our life. Lord Jesus, come in glory. So there's uh, something about the very nature of the ground upon which all of reality is based that is um, being dealt with here at Golgotha. So very interesting. Maybe more than we can chew at any one given time. So, Noah, do you have something?
That the see how does like Christ is like the emptiness um of the skull like refer to the like the womb and then like like a place being reborn, and Job and Jonah present two forms of like the two faiths, so two sorts of faith, where Job is very goes into an excess, is a has an innocence about his way of life. He's blame blameless and yet small in his sort of circle of of family and livestock. He's brought outside that, yet um, he comes from a point of faith being or of his faith in God being perfect, not perfect, like unquestioned. Like he's very faithful to God, and he doesn't know God, and often goes to excess. And his little bit of excess is towards worrying. His his character is small, and then like Jonah is another side, and Jonah is brought into God's presence at the end, and in a more upward direction, and Jonah is not very faithful, or not so faithful. He's condescending towards his, not condescending, like his purpose and mission he tries to avoid, and so he's brought down into like a depth, another sort of emptiness in Christ. to be taught. And Christ is a higher form of both of those patterns.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's really something to think about, right? How Job and Jonah are sort of opposite in their faithfulness and in their scope. With Job having a small scope, but like really inflated, innocent faith. And then on the other hand, Jonah having a huge scope, being already a famous prophet. Did I say Job? Jonah being a famous prophet, but running from his decree and then just not rising to the occasion at all. That's really interesting to put them side by side because I think, for me anyway, I get really distracted by the sublime that shows up in both. You know, everyone wants to jump to the Leviathan in Job, and in Jonah, um, I've heard a lot of people, academics and religious commentators alike, refer to Jonah as a comedy. It's like laugh out loud funny at parts, where he's actively resisting the divine will, and a fish swallows him and takes him where he has to go. Um, the the emotional weight of them is so exactly opposite. And yet, Jonah has in the middle of it a sublime prayer in the belly of the whale that I think um, is a total tonal shift from the rest of the book, where it really is a sincere psalm. So uh, it's interesting that both have their encounters with the sublime. And I just saw the meme Kevin put in the comments there. That's pretty funny. So, Tommy, you want to expand on that comment about the handless maiden? Or is that from the previous discussion?
I mean, it's just when we talked about the king going in to get the handless maiden and his son from the forest, they both had sort of opposite experiences within the woods, but both of them came out of it in similar. Well, at least they both came out of it for the betterment of each other, in the same way that Job and Jonah descend into this sort of despair and then emerge better off.
Yes. So there's many different doors into Tehom, and sometimes it appears to act as a tomb, and sometimes as a womb, uh, always bringing about the birth of a new thing. There's before we close up on Jonah and move to Job, I wanted to point out one little quote here. It says, "Out at sea, in a tempest, Jonah was thrown overboard. Swallowing him, a whale turned flukes and surrounded, carrying him down under the roots of the mountain, under the roots of Psyche and universe, not under them as two realities, under them as one reality, because at root, center, and at summit, Psyche and universe are one and the same." Root, center, and summit. That is our smoke hole and prayer mat for those of us who were in the last book read through. And we said in that discussion that the center pole of the yurt that this is describing is our axis mundi. So we have um, sort of a representation of our yurt here, calling the top center the pole, or calling the top summit is our smoke hole, the center is our axis mundi, and the root is our prayer mat. And these are all part of what makes up the psyche and universe, the spirit and body of life, let's say. And what's underneath the prayer mat we might call Tehom, and what's above the smoke hole we might call Tehom, or that which is beyond the stars, the great deep. Deep calls unto deep, perhaps. So I just thought that was pretty neat to see all of that come together so perfectly in one quote. All right. All right, so let's talk about Job then. Thanks, Candace. Yeah, it's between the two. Interesting. All right, so let's talk about Job. Um, one of the things I absolutely loved that I can't believe, and I feel so dumb for not having latched onto this before, that Job is a man of the city, and he sits at the city gates, and he represents conventional, civilized wisdom. I don't know why that had never quite clicked for me before, but um, I can almost see him sitting at the gates of the rational mind, as if the gates are the mouth and the city within is like the mind. And he is articulating the wisdom of that culture. And it says in this book that he was much given to Proverbs. And I love that because the book of Proverbs, as I'm sure you all know, is full of the kind of wisdom literature common all throughout the world that says, oh, if you do good, good things will happen to you. If you do bad, bad things will happen to you. And we find that that scope of wisdom is not uh, it's not enough. It's not true enough. It's not a big enough blanket to cover our reality with. And um, I love that that's one of the books of wisdom within the Bible. And there's a couple of the books that call them, that get classified as books of wisdom, and that Job itself is another one of those books of wisdom. So um, both the category and the breaking of the category are in the same bin, if you will. So I really love that. Let me catch up on the comments here. Tommy, let's hear what your quote is.
No, we that's way off track. We don't want to go down that tunnel. I'm sorry.
Fair enough, but try to track it down and put it in the comments for us.
Okay.
Okay, so back to Job. I have highlighted in this chapter an entire chunk of this chapter because it was so good, and I'm going to just go ahead and read it. It says, "Suddenly, as if in the night while he slept, there had been a wide breaking in of waters. Civic, domestic living was swept away, and Job awoke, his proverbs no use to him now, at the frontier. Job had come before himself. The self he had come before was a king of terrors. Nights now when Job was a brother to dragons and a companion to owls. Nights now when hell was naked before him, when before him, within him, destruction had no covering. Nights now when, like it or not, Job must drink the wine of astonishment. Nights now when, drinking it to its dregs, Job must drink the cup of trembling. A man inwardly clairvoyant to all that he inwardly was, behemothly. A man sore amazed. A man sore expectant of what had already come to pass. A man sore expectant of abyss and beast eruptively from within. A man sore broken in the place of dragons. His religion couldn't watch with him. Wise only in the wisdom of the city gates, civilization couldn't keep watch with him. Job was in trouble. Job was at the frontier." So good. that little paragraph alone was worth the cost of the book. Couple of things. First of all, abyss and beast eruptively within. Did you guys see that as a reference to Behemoth and Leviathan as a sort of like enormous flesh and enormous spirit that only God can tame?
Case again, Anna.
So he says, abyss and beast eruptively from within. So I was wondering if he was making abyss the Leviathan or Tehom or both, and then beast as the behemoth, the great flesh creature, both of which in Job it describes God being just absolutely massive beyond reason, and God is the only one who can deal with them, but to him they're like toys. So I saw that abyss and beast as Leviathan and Behemoth, and as sort of like this cosmic sized, all flesh and all spirit. Uh, what do you guys think? Is that what he's getting at, or have I gone off on a tangent?
I think it's a lovely tangent, Anna, because I hadn't seen it, and it makes sense because I think there's a umbrella-like structure. I don't know if you see archetypes that way, but it looks like an arch, just the word formation. And I think of Christ as being able to contain it all. And so when you divide reality up into spirit and body, then, well, maybe it isn't making it cozy at all. It's making it enormous.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped me, though, because this idea of the empty skull, it really bothers me that I have to lose what I think I want to hang on to. And if there's no answer in Christ, then there's no answer, right?
Yeah.
And I feel overwhelmed by the enormity of my own flesh and my own deception of myself. And so, I don't know. I love that there's something very hopeful about what you just said, although I hadn't thought of it at all. I don't know what anyone else is thinking, but I hope to hear someone else.
I think there's a resonance between the inward clairvoyance in who he inwardly was. It's being contrasted with this with the realm of God. Uh, he was religion and the wisdom of its city, the things that he carried in his mind and from his inward and almost innocent world, wasn't able to handle God, the notion, the like the presence of God.
Yeah.
And all of his vastness, and the religion he's talking about, he's being carried forward from the kind of the kind of thoughts and knowledge which may help you get through the limited world of man.
That is amazing. I'm trying to make a chart to capture all of this. Okay, so it's as if Job's city mind is containing that psyche universe, and then the larger cosmic reflection of that is the Leviathan beast combination, which is like the largest psycheverse, and that is housed in God's divine ground. So the divine ground then is not like the Leviathan. The divine ground is the mirror image of the city. The city is man's world, man's wisdom. The divine ground is God's city, the city of God, the kingdom of heaven. So much bigger and vaster and all containing. Is that kind of where you were gesturing at, the mirroring of a sort of mirroring and much biggerness of city, let's say Job's city versus God's divine ground? Or
Yeah.
have I gone someplace completely different?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I'm going to have to think about this forever because uh, there's something that wants to get mixed up between um, the Tehom that might be in the Leviathan's mouth versus the Tehom that is the divine ground. Do you guys see what I mean when I'm talking about this? That like it's almost like the Leviathan's mouth opens, but what's inside is not Leviathan, but Tehom. Does that make sense to anyone?
Yeah, we would call it nowadays like the theme or the atmosphere. So
Mm,
like a witch's hut or Baba Yaga's hut, its theme and atmosphere on the inside matches the theme and atmosphere on the outside. But if you enter, if you're in like a bog and it's foggy and muddy, then you enter a hut that is like Bilbo's house or Bilbo's hobbit hole. You've kind of left the dreary bog and entered a different space.
interesting. So it is kind of like a Narnia door in a way. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, that makes sense with our otherworlding conversations so far in this book. Speaking of otherworlding, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping conversations too quickly. Um, Before I forget, this little aside, this section that we're reading, Job confronts himself. He said Job had come before himself. He had come before himself as a king of terrors. And that made me wonder. And I did a little research to see if this was a plausible reading, and you can kind of get there with traditional Jewish commentary, maybe kind of sort of, but bear with me. Um, the book of Job begins with a Satan, an adversary in heaven that God challenges and says, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And uh, he's usually painted as some kind of formal angelic office doing a job of um, uh, putting on trial, right? And that's certainly one way to read it. But then thinking about this from the context of this book so far that we're reading, The Dream Time, where there's this other world and an other world self. And I'm thinking specifically of our king earlier on, whose name was Pwyll, if you recall. He encounters another king and swaps places with him. Well, I'm thinking of this, and then when he sees himself again, he's looking into his own eyes, sees himself as another, and we realize he's been looking at himself this whole time. So what I'm positing to you is that perhaps at least our author is positing that Job's Satan is himself, sort of bearing witness of himself in heaven. Um, there is you could say, the sort of personal angel that bears witness of you in heaven, your good deeds and your bad deeds, sort of like that, but being an extension of your own psyche. Yes, a wild twin, exactly. Um, I don't want to tread too far into theological mire here, but at least from the context of this book, considering uh, the king of terrors, brother of dragon and companion of owls, Job is now brother of dragon, companion of owls in the place of dragons, contemplating himself and his own inadequacies, seeing on a cosmic level the size of Behemoth and Leviathan. Um, whether or not this is some kind of confronting yourself in an otherworld mirror. Exciting to think about. What do you guys think?
It's definitely exciting. I'm definitely in awe.
I think that's great because it said like his own civilization like couldn't contemplate this or something like that. I forget the line, but it couldn't contain it.
Mm-hmm.
Just
It does kind of point to that last, well, it wasn't the last interview with Matthew, but it was the one, let me see if I can get the right interviewer. No, I can't even come up with his face. But Matthew indicated that the accuser, that he could be the accuser of what was wrong in
Yes.
the structure of the institution of the church. And he was wrestling with those things that were maybe mistaken, but more than that, it was the approach he was taking would not be vengeful. It would not be corrupted by his own envy or his will to power. And that has really been, changing for me because I want to do one or the other. I don't want to do both. I don't want to, I will excuse people and then I will get really mad at them. But I can't seem to weigh or balance this is wrong, but this is God's work in my life. So don't fight it. Find out the most you can about yourself and change. So the adversary is not evil. My husband has this thing, he says, we have a conflict with someone, and he explained it that there are two men that are going to different cities. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but maybe that's Job and Jonah in a way. That how they present themselves has to do with where they're going. So the verses, the Jonah is this, and I don't know. I need help here though, because I'm treading water and I'm not really.
I think you're doing a great job. I think that is exactly why they have such different scopes as they're going in two different directions. And we can talk about being an adversary, being an opponent, opponent processing. Like all of these are sort of par for the course in these kinds of discussions. So the the clash comes from uh, directionality a lot of the times, and
It's
the the search for a north star that we can all aim at is what keeps us from clashing into each other. So I hope that
yeah,
kind of
that helped me.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I am going to have to go pretty soon here, which is unfortunate because I wanted to get to Candace's question about what it means to, and I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's like see a situation and recognize it, or recognize yourself, or recognize someone else. And hopefully Candace can take that question away after I leave, because I don't even know how to pronounce the word, let alone explain it. But there, I'm looking at it right here. Anna Norizes. I don't know if that G is silent.
Mm.
But so I want to put the kernel of an idea before I go, which is what we've been talking about: confronting your otherworld self, having like an opponent who means well for you, to sort of gut your small civilization mind of the things that are going to prevent you from something. That process, when we're talking about archetypes from a Jungian perspective, is all about individuation. So for him, it's all like, oh, you got to find these aspects of yourself that are supposedly opposite to you, and you got to find a way to integrate your shadow and all these different kind of things. And actually, it says right here, and I think he is directly speaking to Jungian philosophy here. It says, nowadays, in many societies, it is expected of persons that they will become uh, in, inimitable, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But he says, unique individuals. in inimitable, unique individuals. There have been, no, there have been and are societies, however, where a contrary outcome to our growing was or is desirable. Archetypalization, not individuation, is the goal. So let's put those words side by side. Archetype versus individual. Individuation is that Jungian process of using the archetypes to find out who you are as an individual, becoming a better you, but a more pronounced individual. Whereas he's contrasting this idea. Actually, the idea is to get closer to this archetype. In fact, he explains that in medieval Christendom, the idea is to get rid of as much of yourself as you can to become as close to the Christ archetype as possible. And then he goes on to compare that to, in ancient Egyptian uh, mortality or mortuary rites, you would then like called Osiris. So this is an important thing for us to hold on to, that as we're confronting this otherworld self and we're encountering opposition that's going to mean good things for us, the goal is not to become the most you can be, but to become the most like this archetype, and to empty your skull and let Christ's skull fill it. Now, we've talked about before, a long time ago, this is like maybe a year ago, when we were first talking about Martin Shaw and his discussion of the half girl who comes back to the village as a whole person and then shares her story, but she comes back with her unique limp. And then we talked about how she becomes a tree at the end of that story. And it was like each one of her stories that she gave to these villagers was like a leaf from this tree, and the leaf was like good medicine. So we were talking about how each leaf, each story, each person is unique and comes with their unique gifts and blessings, but that the goal is not uniqueness. Uniqueness is more of a result of um, something. So that's two things I want us to hold on to. You're special and unique, and also pursuing special and uniqueness is not the way forward. I hope that makes sense, because I'm not going to have time to unpack it with you all. And that is only in partway into the first chapter that we read today. There are two more chapters. So I hope you all will continue to discuss. I'm going to step out and I hope to be caught up on the conversation later. But thanks, everybody. And I will not see you next week or the next one. I will see you the first week of December.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Hope you have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks. You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye. She left us with a heavy idea,
She did.
didn't she? Yeah. It isn't confusing though, actually, because you feel the pull toward becoming the real you, and that, and the half girl, to me, that's being accepting the spiritual as a part of yourself. So, but the more I talk, the more I realize I'm gonna get myself confused. See, I was, as long as Anna was talking, I was feeling pretty good. It's funny, isn't it? So, Candace, are you still at the surgery? Or can you talk
I'm
now?
in the car. I can drive. I mean, I can talk.
Oh, good.
I can
Oh,
talk
good.
and drive. I had a thought, a question, but now I've forgot it. But it'll come
Mhm.
back.
Well, maybe we ought to just open it up to anyone
Oh, yeah.
in response to what we just experienced.
Oh, yeah. I remembered my thought. I can't remember what chapter it was in. But it seemed like he was making a distinction between these, these other traditions. He's like Nirvana and I don't know what the other things are called, moksha, or kind of this experience of like oneness, right? Or what's the word? Just kind of like transcendence. And it seems like that's the goal of the traditions, right? That's kind of like the highest level you can attain, and it's the goal. And so he's comparing Christ's experience to that, but he says the reasons why he did it is different, and I think that's what makes it different. Because it seems like, well, the way he put it, what stood out to me was in the other traditions, it's kind of like a selfish pursuit in a way, it's like, I want to reach transcendence, I want to reach nirvana, but I don't see that in Christ's thing. He didn't do it for him, he didn't do it so that he could reach this state. He went down into that divine darkness for us,
Yeah, that's really good insight. I think there's a relationship between that too and Moses on Mount Sinai when he also experiences divine darkness at the summit.
Mhm.
There's a difference in the transcendence direction because Christ
Yeah.
lowers himself, and our movement is upward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because when Christ has a transfiguration on Mount Tabor, Tabor, how do you pronounce it? Mount Tabor, I think it is. And then he has a descent, and he shows divine darkness in the descent, whereas Moses only shows it in the ascent. So it's really interesting to see that Christ, it's almost as if Christ comes full circle with Moses and completes Moses.
That's an interesting visual. Yeah. It's like we go to the divine darkness through ascending. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's how we usually think of it. But with Christ, we're getting this like this glimpse that there's also glory in death, or how to transfigure death. And that was something I don't think we saw with Moses, but Moses set it up such that we were able to get that through him.
Okay, there was one other quote. I'm just going off of my head. But he said, like, he's talking about the Tenebrae, I think it was in the Tenebrae chapter. And he's like, you wouldn't be able to notice this or see this if you were looking at it with Easter eyes. Does anybody have that quote?
Let me see if I can find it. What was it again?
He was talking about, well, I can see if I can find two. I'm going to stop. Here. Okay. He says, the process of self-emptying, which began in heaven, had its end most triumphantly here. Sorry, I don't know what page I'm on. I'm on page 44. Somebody else has to read now. And
I don't.
it's the triumph isn't visible.
I see. Which book is this that you guys are reading from?
Oh, it's called Dreamtime. Dreamtime by John Moriarty.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. The triumph isn't visible. It isn't visible to someone who might look for it with ordinary eyes. It isn't visible to someone who might look for it with Easter eyes.
I thought that was an interesting idea. Like, because I think what Moriarty is getting at is like, we got to look at this Friday, the Good Friday, and like there's this huge triumph on that day that we often miss because we only see the day of Easter, the resurrection as the triumph. But I think he's trying to say, there's like a triumph in this moment on Friday, right?
Yeah.
It's what Tolkien calls the eucatastrophe.
Okay.
It's both. It's a triumph and a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting that you're pointing again at darkness, aren't you? Because Tenebrae is a liturgical thing that they snuff out the candles, right? They're going to a place of darkness. And so you're pointing at what specifically, Candace? Having different eyes?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just pointing at what he's pointing at. Like you might not see the triumph of going into the skull, or if you're looking at it with different eyes.
I see what you're saying, because we're again talking about an aim or a purpose. The purpose of is if you jump ahead, you don't go through death. If you go to resurrection too quickly, you won't actually go through the process. So if you look at, like, Philippians 2 is one of my favorite chapters, because you see the Godhead. You see God as the transcendent, and Christ emptying himself, pouring out his godly prerogatives, and becoming a servant, and a servant obedient unto death. And so there's this descent into death. And if you go too quickly, like, we want the ascension, but you miss the ascension if you don't go through death. You'll just, I mean, I'd like to skip right to resurrection. I have to be honest. No? Isn't that what we're all after?
What did you guys think about, right on that page also, it says, are we waiting for something that has already happened? He's talking about the second coming.
That's deeply interesting and mysterious.
Yeah, I think the one way to look at the eschatological things is like that's the end of time. That's the doing away with time. And so if you're outside of time, there's no past, present, or future. There just is what is. So it's pointing to that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I can walk.
I gotta mute for a second.
David, what do you mean, bright sadness?
Well, there's that time of the year, or that time from Friday to Friday and Saturday before the resurrection. That's kind of the feeling of that time period, and but you could feel that anytime in your own life. Like it may be the feeling of repenting because you're like, oh, I see this thing where I'm missing the mark, and I'm gonna attempt to make things better. So there's like seeing that you're missing something is both the sadness and the brightness of like, okay, I'm going to turn from that and go for something better. Is you have both feelings. I don't know. It's there is something in that whole, like when you fast and you're reflecting and dwelling on your own shortcomings. It can be sad, but it's also the place where you get hope. There's also brightness in it, in a way that's just, yes, it's different than Easter eyes, as he says. Anyway, that there's a more of a longer form meditation on that I linked, but that is it's a feeling, it's a whole thing. There's a word in Greek for it that he opens the article with. Like there's a lot written on that specific feeling or moment.
He had that question at the end of the chapter. He's like, who dares to ask this question? Did you guys understand it or have any thoughts on it? I can read it.
Go ahead.
Okay. He says, a question comes to mind, but who is big enough to ask it? Who is morally big enough to assume moral responsibility for asking it? I am not. And yet, in fear and trembling, I ask it. Is Easter, as we have traditionally understood it, a satisfactory answer or finale to Good Friday? Is Good Friday itself the only adequate answer to Good Friday? Is an Advaita Vedanta understanding and experience of Good Friday the only adequate outcome to Good Friday? Now I got to remember what Advaita Vedanta means. I think it's well, it just has to do with that abyss, the darkness. What does that mean? What does that question mean? What do you guys think about it? Oh wow, Tommy had a big. Is everybody just David, you're off mute. Do you have thoughts on that?
I'm reading Tommy's thing.
Oh, okay, read Tommy's thing out loud then.
Okay. Well, you have a great question, but we
can come back to it.
We can return to. Okay, Tommy says, but this is a quote from something. I don't know what he's quoting. But the consolation of fairy tales has another aspect than the imaginative satisfaction of ancient desires. Far more important is the consolation of the happy ending. Almost, I would venture to assert that all complete fairy stories must have it. At least I would say that tragedy is the true form of drama and its highest function. But the opposite is true of fairy stories. Since we do not appear to possess a word that expresses this opposite, I will call it eucatastrophe. The eucatastrophic tale is the true form of fairy tale and its highest function. The consolation of fairy stories, the joy of the happy ending, or more correctly, of the good catastrophe, the sudden joyous turn, for there is no true end to any fairy tale. This joy, which is one of the things which fairy stories can produce supremely well, is not essentially escapist nor fugitive. In its fairy tale or otherworld setting, it is a sudden and miraculous grace never to be counted on to recur. It does not deny the existence of discatastrophe, of sorrow and failure. The possibility of these is necessary to the joy of deliverance. It denies, in the face of much evidence, if you will, universal final defeat, and in so far is Evangelium, giving a fleeting glimpse of joy, joy beyond the walls of the world, poignant as grief. It is the mark of a good fairy story of the higher or more complete kind that however wild its events, however fantastic or terrible the adventures, it can give to child or man that hears it, when the turn comes, a catch of breath, a beat and lifting of the heart, near to or indeed accompanied by tears, as keen as that given by any form of literary art and having a peculiar quality.
That reminds me, I think that goes with the question that I posted on the group. That eucatastrophe point seems kind of like that. that other moment he talked about, right? Where it's like you kind of have this, like, your eyes are open and all of a sudden you see something
Mm-hmm.
that, and it kind of also reminds me of last week's verklempt. Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
This is also what he keeps talking about with the Gethsemane moment.
Mm-hmm.
Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane has a sort of awakening of what his role is in the story.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so he's saying that Christ awakens to this.
I mean, there's a lot of speculation about how deep Christ's condescension goes and how much Christ knew about his deity, because he doesn't know the day or the hour of his second coming. Only the Father knows. So there is some things that he is not knowledgeable of, either by his own choice or by necessity. But that's like a theological debate. But the eucatastrophe is also this moment in the Bible where Christ is in the garden. He and us as readers are reading it, and he knows that something bad is coming. But in the narrative, we're not told what's going to happen to Christ. We just know that he dreads it, and then from that point onward is just, it's all catastrophe. Everything after the Garden of Gethsemane is catastrophe until the resurrection. And then you have the eucatastrophe.
Mm-hmm. And all the people around him, I mean, they were expecting only just the savior. They were only expecting, someone to finally save them, and then it goes through all this catastrophe for them. And so they were
Yes.
also experiencing that, because it was like, that wasn't supposed to happen. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Yep.
And then when he on the resurrection, they see, oh.
We were delving into the idea of conversation, universe, and the root word of verse, which is a story basically, or the words that you use to clothe your thoughts. The word itself points to the twisting or turning at the edge. And if you can think of it like the loom, weaving rather than, but I did have a little vision of reap a cheap, or everyone going to the end of the world and you fall off. So instead of falling off at the edge, you turn and you're woven back in to the center. So there is a catastrophe at the edge of the world. You fall off. And so conversation and dialogue and the logos informing us
Stories.
from each other. So the logos in David and Candace and all of us actually twist together for the fabric of understanding.
Yeah.
But there is darkness both at the center and the outside. And so you can see it ties it all together. And with that wisdom, I have to go. I love you guys so much.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Jill.
Bye, Jill.
Thank you as always.
Candace, so I'm noticing something in this question that you bring up where he says, a good question comes to mind, but who is big enough to ask it? And we're coming in this on the heels of this discussion of Job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big theme in Job. And the culmination of Job in chapter 38 is, he's asking all these questions, and then in chapter 38, the Lord answers Job out of a whirlwind,
Mhm.
and then he goes on and says, "Well, who is this? And who are you? And where were you?" And I mean, we could read the whole thing, but there's just a lot of like, where do you stand to be able to ask these questions, Job? And
Oh.
there's also a Jonathan Pajot uses this line of thought a lot whenever you hear him talk about the new atheists or the critiques of religion that are outside of religion that are, it's like, well, where do you stand? Like, what are you basing your, what is science based on? Like, where are you standing on science? What is science standing at? Like, it's a very
Mm.
similar thought process that he goes through. And we have it in Job, and we have it at the conclusion of this chapter. I don't know if he's heading in the same direction, because he's kind of using that to say, let's be open to the possibility of Hinduism and the Vedas, and like, it gets back to some of my distance from Moriarty and where he goes is, like he's pointing out great things, and the beyond rationality of religious thought. Like, yes,
Yeah.
agreed. But then he's using that as like the springboard of like, okay, then all these um, philosophies of the world, we can just say, yeah, they're kind of the same thing, but they're not. I don't know. That's
Yeah, I'm
my
wondering.
frustration with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious where he's gonna go with it all. Okay, but back in the on page 42, where the Job in the Job chapter at the
Right.
well, it says Job's biblical bluff was called with unlobotomized mind, with unlobotomized eyes. Job beheld the unlobotomized earth. I don't know if you guys already talked about that, but I feel like
I
that
think we
goes
kind
in.
of skipped over it.
Oh, okay,
Like, we
I
were
feel like it
right
goes
around
in.
there, but we didn't mention that part.
Okay, I liked that. I highlighted that because I thought, he's saying you don't just chop up, like he's saying with whole mind, whole eyes, he beheld the whole earth. And I think maybe and then because part of his question after the other one, well, the very end of that chapter, after the question we just discussed, have we Christians closed our account prematurely with what crossing the Cadron might mean? So I think that's what he's probably getting at a little bit. Like, are we seeing the whole picture, or something like that?
Yeah, and
And,
I don't want anyone to get me wrong. Like, I like to read things that challenge my perspective, and I like to read what
Yeah.
he's presenting as this is his take, and he's clearly read a lot more and had a lot more experiences than I have, so I'm learning from him. But anyway, yeah.
But it's
Noah, were you
challenging.
about to say something?
is he being open to so he would it would be a mistake to try to take in all of the equivocate um, the traditions outside of the West, outside of Christianized Europe European um, cultures. Like we can go, it would be our Christians. So when we think about it, is like what um, I guess it isn't one is. I think the so one thing that like Christianity has done is taken in like one of the first things that Christians did in the first say 1500 or 1200 years after Christ's death, different like the Nordic, the Irish, the Gaul, and the Germanic, or some of the Germanic cultures were folded into Christianity. And into Catholic, into a Christian tradition, and to place them in opposition. I think it's to shake open that there's this idea that there's like one true systemic faith, and that others need to be shut out.
Mhm.
When it could be like welcomed into Christianity. Welcome, like like what Jesus did wasn't like forcibly convert these people. I don't think he's not also not saying that these are um equivalent equivalent. But then I also think like toward to make it clear what kind of civilizational Christianity he's fighting. He's trying to what he's referencing with the word Christianity is, I think, a closed off mind, which that he encountered as civilization, like as a like in where Job's a man of the city. Well, in the Bible, he's like he's keeps representing this a mind that says, no, this is the only way, or Christianity that is just doesn't have a dream in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he knows, like, he's trying to provide an like he does kind of try to bring in too many traditions at once. I do see, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And if you know there's a vast difference in the approach to, say, suffering or I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of differences. Like there are probably some points of agreement, some points of which by all means let's find those points of commonality and build from there. But
Mhm.
yeah,
It's like,
Anna's back.
Hey, Anna.
would Anna?
I'm.
Driving, but I'm here.
Hey. Yeah, I feel like what you were just saying, Noah, goes into the next chapter, the Tenebrae temple. But I feel like it also it's kind of weaving the thread of the theme so far of the entire book, I think. You know, don't you? It's like yeah, we need a dream. We need a dream time. And this next chapter, it reminded me a lot of like the discussions on enchantment. So I wanted to get Tommy's input on it.
What am I putting in?
Just, well, as we discussed the next chapter, the Tenebrae temple. He asked a question at the end of the chapter again, or maybe it wasn't a question, but the very last part, he says Yeats founded a theater. Completing his dream, maybe we should build a Tenebrae temple. Then once again, the falcon will hear the falconer. Then once again, we will have a center that will hold. That just reminded me of enchantment, you know?
Yeah, you if you think about, well, so I cheated and I read ahead because he expounds on this in the chapter Alt-Jaranga or Alt-Jaranga Rock. So I'll cheat and I'll just read quickly the little part that I highlighted, and it's related to what you're talking about. It says, in Europe, the human psyche has undergone a multitonic Cartesian clean sweep. Everything except conscious high noon, fixed forever at the zenith, has been banished to thin fernale or jail. Our souls are dried away. So in that chapter, he's gonna go on. He's gonna talk more about this theater and what the theater did for Ireland. The So if we ignore Tolkien's criticism of drama for a moment, drama does have a really strong ability to tell a story in a more accessible way than a literature, because people who have a poorly exercised imagination can enjoy the theater, because most of the work of the imagination is being done by actors and stagecraft. And so you can sit and watch a play and have the imaginative work done for you. But what this affords you the ability to do is put a lot more emphasis on things like dialogue and the drama of it. You're not really trying to build a world through words and page count. So when he's talking about the theater, what he's doing is he's talking about a temple for the imagination and a place that you can craft enchantments.
One thing I got was that, at least it might have been, let me look if it was like a ChatGPT note. Oh, okay. Yes. He was saying that the theater, well, okay, ChatGPT was saying the theater, the goal was to have a national theater to stage Irish myths, revive catharsis, awaken the nation. But he's saying that Moriarty is critiquing and saying he didn't go far enough. So he says he gave them a stage, not a sanctuary. So he says Yeats gave Ireland stories, but not transformation.
Yeah, I think that might be in line with Tolkien's criticism of drama.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a rough subject because a lot of people nowadays are not. We don't like the idea of elitism and somebody putting down a thing of art, but drama has its drawbacks.
Mhm.
And so when it doesn't go far enough, that's what I was talking about with the imagination. Is that drama does the imagination work for you? It doesn't encourage your imagination. It outsources it. And so when Yeats, when he's talking about Yeats not going far enough in the future chapters, he's going to describe how he doesn't go far enough, and he starts talking about disenchantment and how the theater did not stop this idea of disenchanting the world. But most people like Martin Shaw or John O'Donohue, everybody in the sort of circle around Moriarty, all agree that either spoken story or written story are superior to the drama because it has that enchanting quality, because it does it sort of seduces the imagination, or as Lewis says, baptize the imagination.
Mm-hmm. I was just wondering, what does it look like to build a Tenebrae temple? You know?
I think that's what Martin Shaw tries to do with his wilderness. When you go out in the woods with him for those retreats, it's not just watching the story; it's experiencing the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think you could build an actual temple. I think that's why Martin Shaw doesn't really like the idea of re-enchantment. He thinks that the world's already enchanted enough. We just have to like lift the veils, which is a valid critique. Yeah, I think that's true. Is that nature has its own sort of magic to it. But what Moriarty has said in the past chapters about he talks about like living the experience. Oh no, I'm getting mixed up. See, this is what happens when you cheat. It might be in a future chapter when he's talking about time. Yeah, I've cheated. It's in a future chapter. So
That's okay. We'll probably have to connect to it later anyway.
yeah.
Mhm.
There is a sense of like you can internalize this, and you are a temple. You can turn the things in your own life around and have the Tenebrae temple experience as your own repentance, your own dying to the things that are holding you down and rising to freedom from those things. Like that's all in there. um,
Yeah, that's
I
exactly
don't know
what
if that's
Anna.
what he has in mind, but
Yeah, that's what Anna was talking about before she split the first time.
yeah.
She was asking the question about archetypes and individuality, and that's what happens in stories, or at least when you read a story. So you read a story and you connect with the hero. Let's use just a common one. Let's use Star Wars. So you're watching Star Wars, and Luke's the poor little farm boy who wants to go off and fight in the rebellion, but he's also not gonna be the kind of guy or kid who leaves his aunt and uncle on Tatooine to do all the farming themselves. So he fulfills the responsibility, and through this you connect with Luke Skywalker, and then the story moves on, and he becomes the hero, and you're like, well, I want to be like Luke Skywalker. So you've ingrained the archetype But then you look at your world, and you're like, well, I can't be a Jedi because I don't have all the Force mind powers. I don't have a lightsaber. My dad's not the ruler of the universe, and he's not evil, so I can't really be Luke Skywalker. But maybe I can adapt the idea of Luke Skywalker and act like Luke Skywalker in my world. So what you're doing is you're not actually going to become Luke Skywalker, but you're adapting him to your environment, which makes it that individual sort of idea. And so what you've done is you've pursued the archetype, but made it an individual effort, because you can't map the exact archetype, and you do that with Christ too. Like you can't. I mean, you could, but it would be fake. Is to go out and get crucified, right? There's no real government on the planet right now that would go to the effort of crucifying you. They probably want you to die quicker, so they probably just shoot you or give you an injection. So arranging yourself to be crucified by Christ would be quite an effort. And to do so, you'd have to do some unchrist-like things to make it happen. And so, yeah, and so you're pursuing the archetype of Christ, but you have to do it according to your environment and the world you live in, and that's what makes it an individual process.
Yeah, but like you could be. Okay, so you're kind of talking about a martyr archetype, which there are many
Yeah.
Christian martyrs, but you can internalize that like I'm a husband, and so I'm a martyr to my own desires for the sake of my family, for the sake of my wife.
Yes,
so, like,
but you are not. But you are not.
I'm not
adopting
dying.
that archetype. Well, not even that, but like adopting the archetype of husband is not being the mirror image of the archetype. You have to adapt it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's taking us to Golgotha and saying, "Is this enough?" And so,
Oh yeah, I get you.
like, his question is this enough, or do we need to smuggle in some Vedas and some Upanishads and some like that's his question. He's bringing it up over and over again. And so
Oh,
that's how I'm taking it.
think of that. I didn't think of that as his question.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's one way to read it. Like he, or
Well,
correct
yeah,
me if I'm wrong.
let me be devil's advocate because I think you're right. But I think what he's doing is he's enticing the question. He's not advocating the question. When he
Okay.
says, so I think when he's bringing in these other religions, he's looking at them and how their imagination is sparked through their tradition. And at the time he's writing this, Christianity was not sparked by an imagination. It was rigid. It was liturgical. It was by the book. There weren't stories being told from Christians. It was a very dry religion. And so he's saying, well, look at all these other religions and look at how their imagination is sparked. If Christianity is as big as we say it is, and Christ is the pinnacle at the top of all these things, where is our imagination? Where's our dream time? What's lacking? So it's like it's like Matthew Pajot talks about with the helpful adversary. I think he's trying to cattle prod a lobotomized Christianity, like we were talking about with the lobotomized nature or lobotomized earth, is that there's this imagination that's been extracted from our brains in this disenchanted world. And like he's just reaching out, he's like, well, you guys have to have some sort of imagination to spark your the deepest part of you.
Yeah. So there's a quote on page 47. I feel like it goes along with what you were just saying. Saint John of the Cross will witness for him. Therefore, rising above all that may be known and understood temporally and spiritually, the soul must earnestly desire to reach that which in this life cannot be known, and which the heart cannot conceive, and leaving behind all actual and possible taste and feeling of sense and spirit, must desire earnestly to arrive at that which transcends all sense and all feeling. I feel like it goes with what you're saying. It sounds to me, he's saying the soul must earnestly desire. It's got to have a dream, right? It's got to have this. It sounds like the ought. Is that the ought?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, wait. So can I go back?
Nope.
David,
Absolutely not.
when you were saying.
It all stops here.
Sorry, we've already moved on. Okay, just what you guys were just talking about. Were you talking about his question about, is Good Friday itself the only adequate answer to Good Friday? Was that kind of the question you were discussing?
Yeah. I mean, he's devoting a lot to I mean, crossing the Kedron is the phrase he's used throughout the book. And if
Yeah.
you are paying attention to that imagery, it's this. It's like
Yeah.
this time. Yeah.
So, okay, I have a question about his question. Is he saying, is he trying to say or get us to think like maybe Good Friday is an adequate answer itself to Good Friday? Or is he trying to say, is that what these other religions are doing? The other religions kind of put on the pedestal the darkness, which I think he is too, but he's also, or is he saying, no, we do need the Easter, but you have to know the darkness, you have to understand what this darkness is too. What is he saying in this question, I guess? Does that make sense? Like, is he actually questioning this? Is he saying, is Easter, as we have traditionally understood it, a satisfactory answer or finale to Good Friday?
I think, what is he, when he says traditionally understood, what is he gesturing to? Or pointing to?
The resurrection, I would think. The day of
Yeah.
resurrection.
Oh, or is he? Or,
There's some part of that you could try to interpolate. What is his background and where is he coming from? Is this a Irish Catholic thing? Is this an Irish Protestant thing? Is this a post-Enlightenment critique on the religion of his homeland? And there's some part we can read his biography and kind of know where he's coming from, and some part where it's just not really explained. Saying the traditional interpretation, I mean, or how it's traditionally understood, could mean a lot of things to a lot of different traditions. So I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Well, back in the chapter crossing the Kedron. He says, on Golgotha, we are beyond the dream division, the dream wound, that opened in the beginning between seer and seen, in the gulf that yawns between Good Friday and Calvary, and Good Friday on Golgotha. Rock of faith becomes abyss of faith. Veda gives way to Vedanta in the gulf. Evangel gives way to Evangelanta. So I think what he's pointing to is that each one of these religions has the same sort of transformation.
Mhm.
They both go into this that I mean, he uses the word there, the abyss. There's this gap that happens with all these religions where they transfer from some sort of event that's happening on our primary world, and then they transform after going through something in this abyss or this dream state. So maybe what he's pointing to with Good Friday is that Good Friday has ascended. It's not Good Friday on its own. I mean, there's a context to it, and the other stories are part of the context.
Mm.
Oh, is he is he saying that, like, comparing then this dry Christianity, this idea, he's like encountering this idea that the crossing, that this descent into darkness and resurrection has already happened, and like in other religions that's still explicitly present. um this descent and ascent, and that's leading to, that's presented as a kind of closure when um which would be supposing that, like, we have already not we, or the Christianity that he's encountering has closed off, has lost some kind of this imaginative faculty, a mystical experience that's present in these other religions.
Mhm.
It- or in, or that, not in these other religions. Like,
I don't know, but it may come up later. Like he may tie all this up at the end, and we're like, oh, okay. Kind of like how Martin Shaw does, where he brings you on this journey. Like, Martin, I don't know what you're getting at, and then at the end of the book, you're like, okay, okay, I get it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sticking with him. Like
Yeah.
it's too intriguing to bail, but
Yeah, because I'm not
there's
100% sure what he's getting at either. I'm just kind of
yeah,
guessing.
but you know, like there's enough um perennialist stuff out there I've wrestled with that it's like ringing some bells for me, and so that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
I would like to hear how you've wrestled with it. I
Oh,
y-
let's see. There is what's that guy's name? Well, let's see. Uh, Thomas Merton might be a figure that goes into that space. Yeah, let's see.
Um,
Yeah, it's just the idea of like, oh, let's look at all the religions. Let's pull out all their similarities, and then the perennialist thing is like they're all saying the same thing, and here's how you need to understand that. And then the critique of that is like, no, actually, they're not saying the same thing, and here's why, which I'm more sympathetic to. But there can be great meditative um, you there?
Oh, he crashed.
Okay, so we all have that nervous knot kind of thing, right? Where you feel like we see that truth is the truth, no matter who's saying it, even if you don't approve of the person speaking the truth. The truth is the truth.
Yeah,
But
what Dave was pointing to is that there was a trend around the time this book was being written, and then like the early 2000s, where that truth was mistaken that all the religions are saying the same thing, and therefore they're all true. And then you get this universal, like, huge, you just suck up all the religions and you make this sort of like monster Frankenstein religion. I think he's just cautious of that.
mm. Well,
I see. Hmm.
so I think like that kind of thinking confuses. So when trying to establish like the one true, maybe the perspective that like that can be taken such that that I such that we can, I guess we can, a lot of work's been done to bring to bear even the possibility of seeing all multiple religions in print, uh, in in video form, and we're living in that time right now, where that's a time now where that's possible. And taking a perspective that they are trying to do something outside of the like the context which they developed
Hmm.
um and equivocate them is silly and more of like a it just like at face value. uh Looking at what they are doing is by their evidence, and um is a more like requires quite a bit more depth. So I think they've been, like I said, I'm just thinking about the religions that we like trying to equivocate. It might just be that he's curious as to where, and while we're reading um, what happened to Chris, to this dream or imaginal realm or eyes in Christianity as he's encountered it, and then what's gone on in the other religion. Like he's in other religions. I don't.
So you're saying you think he's just saying like, what happened to Christianity? Let's look at these other religions and like see what they are doing or what they did, or is that kind of what you're saying?
But yeah, although going that direction is also like towards the perennialist.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think exploring the perennial echoes of the Christian story next to so many other stories um, is begging the question exactly as Noah was saying that, um, well, you sort of immediately have your hackles up. Well, this is what makes the Jesus story different. This is why the Jesus story is the divine ground in which all these other fairy tales are nested. Um, to say that, you have to then ask, okay, well, look around. Why isn't Christianity having this effect? And you can ask that from a denominational point of view or a civilizational point of view, but um, I think that's the kind of the two things being kind of chewed on is, well, what makes it the divine ground? What makes it the story that holds all stories? And then if it does that, why isn't it effective? Like having power. Where did the dream time go?
Huh. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what I think he's saying. I mean, Moriarty. I think that's Moriarty's point.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a bunch more. Oh, sorry, my son. Hey, I'm still. There's a bunch more in this chapter to chat about, but I feel like I better probably hop off.
Yeah, I got to get going too.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
so
was
we're.
fun though.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
So we don't meet next week or the next. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
a 2-week break.
Okay.
If-
Gonna miss you all.
Yeah.
And that-
I'm gonna miss you all too. I had my brother's wedding I was like traveling last week.
Oh, fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Keep up
See you
on the
all.
chat, guys.
See you in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.